Curry County. I'm Mindy Turner, your Family and Consumer Science agent. I am joined today by Mason Grau, our ag agent here in Curry County, because for this series we're going to talk a little bit about our spring gardening. So I brought Mason along. He's going to give us some pointers on kind of when and what we should be planting at this time of year. So Mason, why don't you give us a little overview kind of what we should be doing right now?
So right now, it's getting towards the end of that late spring, last freeze kind of area. The Farmer's Almanac is a good resource to use when looking at that. So according to them, our late freeze or average frost date is around April 26th. Some other websites may tell you April 15th. Being here in this county my entire life, I always heard, there's a couple of wives' tales, but if you're gonna plant, if you're worried about a frost, I would recommend planting at the very tail end of April, or really that next week in May. If you want to be safe, plant later in that May area. So some things we need to think about are we need to have a plan when we go into our garden of what we're going to plant and when. And a lot of the times we use, if we're going to use a direct seed into the ground, they have the directions on the back. So on this one, this is cilantro. On this one it says that we're going to do a direct sow and not to start indoors. Now some of them you can start in indoors, and that can be really helpful to get that plant to maturity faster.
And he's reading that from, I always have trouble with the lights, but on the back of the packet there's that little table in really little font, so those of you like me with aging eyes can pull out your, take a picture with your phone so you can blow it up bigger, or good old-fashioned just a magnifying glass so you can read that information. But I was telling Mason before we started, I'm bad about that, just going, oh, I know how to do this, and never looking at the package. And there's so many varieties now of plants and seeds that may respond differently to our climate. So that's just an important piece to remember, that that's on there on your packets.
Yes, ma'am, that's a good point. Another thing to think about, some plants, think some of your cabbage varieties, they say to plant, if you're going to direct sow, some of them say to plant 4 to 5 weeks before your average frost date. So for us, we need to make sure we're safe. We're probably want to be safer on the end. So if that average frost date for us is April 26th, we need to plant closer to that, or make that 5 weeks to that date, so we don't plant too early. What else do we need to know, Mindy?
So if I'm not planting seeds directly, because I'm impatient, y'all know this, you've watched me do a lot of these videos, and I like shortcuts. So if I go and I just want to purchase plants, are there things I need to consider in what, I mean, if it's sold in the store, it's just going to grow here, right?
Not always. And so your big stores like Lowe's may not always have plants that are very viable in your climate. And so that's when you need to contact your extension office, and we can help you get that sorted out. Some of your local nurseries will provide you with plants that are more adaptable to your climate. And transplanting is a good way to get ahead, and really those plants that can be transplanted have a better chance of going further down the road and maturing faster. And so one thing when you're transplanting and putting them into your garden, some plants you want to make sure to protect them early on. Maybe provide a little shade, so we don't want to just shock those plants that have been indoors or in those greenhouse environments and then just put them outside and expect everything to go right, okay? So maybe we provide a little bit of shading early on to protect those, protect them from the wind, but it'll give them a better chance to thrive.
Okay, and then just like with your seed packets, whenever you purchase the plant, they should have the stakes in them that are going to tell you the information you need to know about what type of planting area, how big they're going to be. This one talks about how if you're planting it into a container, how big your container needs to be, how far apart you have to put them. Because I was always one of those, I figure you just shove as much as you can in the space that you have. And then I'm surprised when they don't do well. So I think that's an important piece to consider. But most of these things do have labels. But like Mason said, if you are still confused, we have Mason, of course, and then we have another, we call her our resident gardening expert who grows a lot of things, that's going to be here with me next time. So you can contact our office with those types of questions, and we are more than happy to give you the information that you need. I am more than happy to take a message. Gardening is not my thing, that's why I'm bringing in some experts to help us out this time. One thing, like I said, all of these you see here grow things that we can eat. So it's a great alternative to just buying expensive produce, or, but it is seasonal. So what would be, again, right now, as we're moving into what will probably be a hot summer,
Yep.
what would be the best varieties or types of produce to plant?
So you're gonna wanna look at your cool season vegetables. So when we're looking at these seeds, if we're assuming it's gonna be a really hot summer, the day we plant it, we wanna look at the date or the maturity, how long it will take for that plant to mature. And so if we're expecting a really hot summer and we plant something that doesn't do well in a very hot climate, well, maybe we wanna plant a vegetable that is quick to grow and we can beat that hotter weather. Some are very tolerant. You wanna look at your warm season crops. I have my list right here. We have a lot of beans are very well, cucumbers, eggplants, okra, peppers, and squash. Squash is a great one in this climate. And Zandy will attest to it. It grows really easily, and we can sometimes plant squash 2 times a year. We'll have a spring crop and a fall crop. Your tomatoes. I know everyone wants tomatoes in this area, and you can do it very well in this area, but some things you want to watch out for. Tomatoes, you're probably going to want to transplant, or you want to start them inside or indoors, whether it's you or in a nursery, and get those started as fast as you can because they have a really long maturity date. So one thing I didn't mention, and back to the Farmer's Almanac, so typically we have between 150 and 185 days during the growing season. That's not always the case in this area. Sometimes we get a real short growing season, and we want to look at what we see outside. Is it really windy and dry? Well, maybe we need to provide some protection to our plants that don't really tolerate high winds, and so maybe we want to plant them closer to a wall around somewhere in our garden, or maybe a fence. And so that's another thing to think of.
Okay. If we are planting, let's say even tomatoes, and you can see these are started tomatoes, and some of these varieties say on them that they're better for heat, that they're a hardier plant. Others are not so much, like the Romas. They'll probably grow here, but probably not for as long. Is that what I'm understanding? Because they're not going to tolerate the heat as well?
Right, so let's see what this tag says right here. So this is a full sun plant, and it gives you the planting depth. Let me see what the maturity is. Sorry, it's a little dirty.
It's still got the dirt on it, yeah.
So 65 days after planting. So this one's already been in the ground, but it's saying 65 days after this plant, you plant this plant in the ground, okay?
Okay, no, that's good to know. And so then the other thing we just want to give you a heads up on, because along with the gardening, the things that we want to eat, then there's also the things that are just to be pretty. And so, of course, we all like flowers, and Mason was explaining to me earlier, I can't plant these and expect them to come back every year, and I have to do the work every year to plant my annuals so that I've got them. But these did have, this is a 4-plant, because we bought them to use as for a project with our 4-H'ers, and the information for this is actually on the container for the side, for if it's sun or shade or whatever you want to put it in. Because again, I see a lot of really pretty tropical plants in the stores, and I guess I just need to be prepared to water a lot if I choose something like that.
And that could be the case. What also could be the case is a lot of these bigger box stores, they have those same plants in every store across the country, and so some of them might not even be something we can have in this climate. They won't thrive, they won't survive. So once you take them out of those greenhouses and those big stores, it's a plant by plant basis, and so you got to do your research. If you see something that you might want, maybe call your extension office and maybe go home and research it even and see if that can thrive in our climate. A good tool to use is the USDA's Plant Hardiness Zone tool. So Curry climate, we're a 7A, and all that really tells you is that we have a real low temperature of like 0 to 5 degrees in the winter, and so a lot of information on there on the plant hardiness zone can be adapted to help you find plants that work in your area.
But if I just want a pretty flower to last a few weeks, I can pick whichever one I want, right? And just know not to plant that one outside.
Yeah, you can keep them indoors.
Yeah, and keep it as something pretty for just a little while. Well, I really appreciate Mason joining us and answering some of these questions. Hopefully this will get you started thinking, because if we learn nothing else, we learn you need to make a plan. Ask some questions, don't just throw it out there and hope for the best. You can do it that way, but then don't be surprised if it doesn't turn out like you wanted. Again, we are with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service. You can get a hold of us at 575-763-6505 or stop by and see us at 818 North Main. We also have a website, curryextension.nmsu.edu, and you can also find us on Facebook. So thank you so much. I hope you'll come back here with us next time. We're going to learn a little bit about how to prepare and maybe what containers would be appropriate if you're not going to be planting directly in the ground with some of these products. So thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great day.